Welcome to the Blue Chip Academy, the Blueprints of Success interview series, providing unique blueprints, tactical knowledge, best practices to navigate the critical points in the football ecosystem so athletes and parents can prepare a plan to a career path that any athlete can bank on. Today, we have UConn running back EJ Barthel in the building. It's going to be a nice little episode today. We get to talk to him as the current running back coach. We had previous stops at the Carolina Panthers, Penn State University, Temple, and Rutgers. EJ, somebody that I worked with while at Penn State University, and we delivered the highest ranked recruiting class in Penn State history that included guys like Micah Parsons, Odafe Owe, Pat Fryermuth, and prior to dominating the recruiting scene in college football, EJ, got into the college game by being an entrepreneur and a coach in the North Jersey area, coaching at powerhouse programs like Paramus, Bergen Catholic, and DePaul Catholic, while training elite athletes like Rashan Gary, Gibirl Peppers, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, to name a few. So today we're just going to welcome into the Blueprint to Success series, EJ Barthel.
What's up?
What's on, man? How's everything?
I'm excited, man. I've been waiting to get on the show, man.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thanks for coming on, man. So we're going to dive right into it. You already obviously know you had a pretty unique look on the football ecosystem, right? Coming up, you're a player. You played at Rutgers, recruiting coordinator, dealt with players at the NFL level, now at UConn. Just take it back to, if for someone that's getting into the football ecosystem, what was one piece of advice that you would give to anybody that's getting into the football business and wants to take this thing serious that they can kind of bank on throughout the whole process, recruiting process, all the way up to professional ranks?
It's fun. That's funny that topic seems to be coming up a lot in the recruiting process and with young coaches and veteran coaches. How do I advance? What do I do? If with all the things that I've been fortunate enough to experience, the one thing I would say would be, and I got this from Coach Rules, is be where your feet are. Like, be where you are at right now and do a great job of doing what you're doing right now, whether that's you're a freshman in high school, or you're in eighth grade, or you're on the JV team, or you're looking for a varsity spot. I know it's human nature to look in advance, but I feel like a lot of times guys forget how important it is to master where they're at right now so they can advance because they're looking ahead of times. So that would be the one thing I would say.
That's critical, man. Just like I love the point that where you're just saying, like, be where your feet are, right? We were just talking about like sharpening, like maximizing where you're at before you're worrying about the next steps or whatever the case may be. So it's like being in the moment, to be honest, right? Like a lot of times athletes are kind of, athletes, coaches, whatever the case may be, might get focus lost and looking at the next place or looking at the next move, whether it's a scholarship offer or going to the draft or, looking for that second contract. And like you said, being where you are is to produce the best thing that you can produce right there and pick up those skills for whatever that next opportunity is for you, right? So it's not in vain and whenever you're doing, because it's all a part of the process. That's real good talk right there. So we just jump into the recruiting process. I mean, you came up as a player, right? Somebody that's had a different view on the recruiting process, like again, as a player, as a recruiting coordinator, as a coach, also looking at it, from an evaluation standpoint from the NFL regards. So as a player, how was your recruiting process?
For me, it was tough, because I was at a smaller school and played in an area where traditionally you have a lot of powerhouse programs. And I went to a really small school and I was kind of played out of position. So I played multiple positions just for the betterment of the team. And I think there's positives and negatives to that. And I also played a position that was kind of, they say a dying breed at the time, which it seems to be coming back all of a sudden, fullback, you know what I mean? For me, I've always had to prove my spot or earn my spot in multiple fashions, whether it be coming from a small school and trying to play Division I and trying to earn a scholarship, and then also trying to become a professional, not getting drafted, having to try out with the Giants, and then having to earn my spot in UFL, Coach Fossil for the Las Vegas Locomotives, and so there, it's been, from a player standpoint, to me, I've had to work for every ounce of success I've gotten. I was recruited by a couple small schools, Hofstra, UMass, Rutgers, Delaware, nothing huge, and that was really it for me. You know what I mean? So I had to really kind of earn my keep, and that kind of factors into my coaching style. It also, there's a human part of recruiting that you find a connection with guys that are high effort guys, right? There's a lot of positivity I've learned from that.
So when you're thinking about that, coming up and where you were in the area of Jersey, and you're saying like, it was like the Hofstras and the schools like that, were you looking around at the other players maybe that were getting recruited that were like, oh, how is he getting this offer from this bigger school and different things like that? I guess Twitter and Facebook where guys are posting offers wasn't a big thing, when you're coming out of high school, but like, did you feel that you should be getting like attention from D1 schools or bigger schools? And for that matter?
I told this story to my brother on Thanksgiving. I don't want to mention names and call people out, but there was a couple guys I played with in the pros that are from my area that were big time prospects out of high school. And I remember like every Saturday or Sunday, whatever it was, reading the papers, and I'll get like a little mention and I see like pictures of other dudes and I'm like, man. And then, it's funny how things work out because I remember being on a plane with those guys and going to tryouts with those guys and out and making teams that those guys didn't make. And so it motivated me at the end of my career. It's something I held on to took it personal.
That's all. I mean, that's true. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So like when you're talking about, the recruitment process, I mean, you're looking around, you see the different people that you're competing against. Obviously, you had the schools that were like at the Hofstra level that were kind of recruiting you. And then you had, you went, you're in the Northeast. So you got the Rutgers, you got the Penn States, the Pitts or that around in that area, Temples. When did you feel like the process got serious? When did you like kind of wrap your head around like, all right, this is like a real football business. Like this process is serious. I need to, put some real skin in the game.
I think that, I think it had to be about my sophomore year when I really started to grow and, high school, college coaches would bump me when they get into school. And, I was an academic issue kid, not because I wasn't intelligent, but I didn't try it as hard as I should have. I didn't have the best, I got to guidance in that department. So I felt like when schools would literally tell me that I got no chance to get in there, like to this day, I remember a story with Coach Foley, who I ended up working with at the Carolina Panthers and at Temple. Funny how things circle back. I remember him, like he offered me a scholarship to Fordham and then basically told me, I can't get you into school. So this is on you. That's when I realized like this is a business.
Yeah, it's real. It's real business. Like when they say go to class, do all these things, like it stops me from an opportunity opening the doors. That's a pretty, that's a eye-opening experience to be like, the business is serious, right? When you're talking about the recruiting process in general.
No question.
How informed did you feel going through the process?
I really, we didn't have a lot of resources growing up and not a lot of experience. Like I said, I went to a smaller school. My high school coach did a fantastic job of getting me in front of the right people. Jim Bonanno did a fantastic job of recruiting. Back then it was VHS and all that stuff. We didn't even have DVDs. But I felt like it was tough, man. If you didn't have a name or a market, people didn't play at a big school, it was hard to get in front of people. It really was. And I didn't have a lot of money to go out to travel to camps and stuff like that. So I wasn't able really to travel, single mom raised. And so it was really the schools that were local that came in to see me where they really, it's kind of all I really had. So it was tough. It really was. It was tough.
That's a big piece that they're just touching on, just like the limited opportunities when, before huddle and all those different things and how coaches came in. How much of a role did your high school coach play in, I guess, sending out your film and things of that nature?
It was fantastic. I was very fortunate to work with him, to have him as my coach because he was able to help me finish academically strong enough to get into college. Become a qualifier. Absolutely. And all those things. And, he took the time to make sure he knew the rules. He knew the GPA standards and the point system to make sure my GPA got to the point where I was able to get into college, get accepted, earn a scholarship, and all those things. So I was fortunate,
So he was fortunate. He was there like on the connecting piece, right? So once the opportunity came and you had that and it was like filling the gaps, he was there to kind of do that. But in terms of I guess, pushing out, like, I guess the name of EJ Barthel in the area of Jersey where you're at? Was that something that was kind of big for high schools at that time? Like when you were coming up, like when the guys that did get a lot of offers, like how were they getting discovered?
Back then it was like the record newspaper in NorthJersey.com. That was like the big thing. That was like the big thing. Like if, so I think even back then, with the way dynamics are now, I think back then it had probably, like, I can see why guys went to bigger schools.
Gotcha.
More powerhouses, because you have more college coaches walking in there versus being at a smaller school. I think today's day is a little different, where technology has changed the recruiting process, where you can be at a smaller school and get the attention of a college coach just by using, social media or, huddle links and all that stuff and things of that nature. So I think I had a hard time versus going to a small school versus today. I feel like you can really pretty much be anywhere. I don't want to say it's easy, but you can really get to college from anywhere, and with technology nowadays.
With the technology, the proper skill set, size, speed, standards, and all those good things, right? Like,
that was just one part of it.
That's just one part.
That's one part of it. That's one part.
Being able to put your film on the internet so everybody can see. That's
part one.
That's one part, one pixel. I got it. I got you, Coach. So on to the next thing. What did you base your decision on? Because you ended up going to Rutgers first, right? So like you had offers. Did you correct me if I'm wrong, you ended up walking on to Rutgers?
Yeah, so I walked on to Rutgers, earned a scholarship at UMass, transferred my junior year.
Okay.
Another coach's staff that recruited me at UMass was at Northeastern at the time. Don Brown, who's at UMass now. So that was kind of my third year. I left Rutgers, played behind Ray Rice and Brian Leonard, two really great ones.
Take me into the decision going into Rutgers. Like, what were you basing your decision on? Did you just feel like this is where I wanted to go? Do you feel like that was your best opportunity?
Yeah, I just wanted to play Division I football. I had FCS at the time. I think we called it 1AA when I was playing 1AA football. I had 1AA scholarships, and I wanted to play Division I. And the only Division I school that was really recruiting me was Rutgers, and I felt like that was a place I wanted to go. And also I had a lot of pride in staying home and being around my family and friends. So for me, it was an opportunity. I felt the competition part I wasn't scared of. I felt like I'd earned my keep. You know what I mean? And didn't work out that way, but I ended up being I thought a valuable member of the team and affecting the team on special teams and then moving on to UMass. And I thought it was the right decision at the time.
Oh, it sounds great. I mean, everybody's journey is different, right? That's why I kind of just preach to these guys. Everybody's football journey is different. It's about using football as a catalyst to get to a career that you can bank on, right? Because now, you're at a successful position, and it's like your whole journey kind of lends well to the skills that you get to portray now, even when you're recruiting, right? Being able to see different things, whether it's an academic issue with a player because you understood that, that kid might not be dumb or whatever the case may be, just, it might be a situation to dig into a little bit deeper. So like being able to have those different perspectives is extremely important, how it lends well. And so guys can pay attention when they're going through, the football ecosystem is imperative.
I mean, from A to Z, what you're talking about, those things, like for example, like I was a hardship kid. So before you were able to get assistance from schools to travel, like there's no way I would have been able to afford a plane ticket home from Virginia or Ohio to get to New Jersey, or you know what I mean? So like for me, being close to home was important because I was able to take New Jersey Transit, for $10 or whatever it was, right to when I needed to get home. You know what I mean? So that was one factor. And then they also, just having the support of a high school coach who also was around. They were able to get to the school, so that for me, being close to home was an asset. You know what I mean?
Right. Having that support system, being close, like you understood kind of what pillars you were leaning on and which you wanted to be close. And that's a lot of wisdom and actually a lot of, vision that a lot of guys don't see, or like, kind of get away from that and see like, I need these things to be successful. So like even going into that, when you made that decision, you based it on like the support system, being able to get home. Were you thinking about your post-football career? Because it sounded like you were thinking about, you were thinking about actually operating in college, which is, I guess, a step further than most guys get to, right? Like what support they need from their parents, being able to get home 10 minutes, having a coach there, and being a Jersey kid and having that pride. but were you thinking about like post-career plans? Like, did you think that you wanted to be a coach when you were going to college?
Yeah. I was fortunate to be around some really good coaches at Rutgers and at UMass. For me personally, without going into too much detail, football was something that gave me an opportunity to really advance in life. You know what I mean? I feel like that's where I learned structure. That's where I learned detail. That's where I learned teamwork. I didn't have that at home, so I was able to kind of take that from my coaching from high school to Rutgers, from UMass, and I was able to learn how that affects life and how that's played a huge part. Always wanting to be a coach has played a huge part. Is what I got from being a player. I mean, I felt like, the big thing, is that affects me is I see myself now diving into players, like how coaches dove into me. You know what I mean? And let's call it what it is. I've been around some good coaches. I've been around some bad coaches, right? So there's this term, the player coach. I don't really know what that means. To me, I feel like everybody's in this business for the development of people in some way or some form. And, the well-being and the growth of the person is where it starts. So it was like a natural calling for me just to jump into coaching. You know what I mean?
Definitely makes sense. And like thinking about going, like you had the idea that you wanted to be a coach going into school. Did Greg Shannon being the head coach at Rutgers at the time, did that have any pull on you wanting to kind of play there? Or was it just more the school, Rutgers, and being home?
I think it was a mixture of things. I think it was the pride of New Jersey, being a in-state kid and being a kid that from New Jersey that wanted to help build something special. I think that was part of it. Similar to where I'm at UConn now, Connecticut and New Jersey, obviously, how close the states are and how connected the states are. Same thing we're kind of building at UConn right now. And there's a sense of pride into building something special. Not that UConn hasn't had success in the past, but there's a sense of pride there. There's a sense of accomplishment to go somewhere and start something versus being someone that is kind of just carrying on tradition, which is also good. That's a good thing too. I mean, but there was a sense of pride in helping build something, which is why I went to Rutgers and it's just actually why I'm at UConn now. That's carried over now. I was just leaving the NFL and people were, questioning why I was leaving the NFL to come into college and come back into college. But there's something special here going on where I can relate to about building, being part of something special. That's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Hit that on the point. So what was like, I mean, you said that you had a little bit of struggles going through the recruiting process, so you had to grind for everything that you had. Did you have a best part of the recruiting process?
I think that was it.
Got you.
I think that work ethic is carried over into the profession as a coach. The game, and you know this as a player because you've had adversity, just like most guys have. Having the mental toughness and the will to strive through when things are not easy, right? And that's not just the football part. Right? There's a lot of things that that kids go through on a day-to-day basis, and maybe football is not the most important thing in their life. You know what I mean? And maybe it's they got a family issue or a personal issue or a mental issue or something that's, the mental toughness to strive through and just not give up. I mean, that's what this whole game is about. That's what they teach us when we're Pop Warner. They teach you from a young age, like about work ethic. You know what I mean? And so
you really touched on it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. That
struggle is the best part, I feel like.
That's very important because it kind of goes back to what you said even in your initial advice that you would give is be where you are, right? Because like you're talking about what you took from the recruiting process, or the best part is kind of the worst part, like with the things that the stresses that came with it, trying to figure out your thing, not getting the attention from the schools that maybe you wanted to get the attention from and things like that. But like the best part is that it built up a level of alligator skin and mental toughness to be able to go through and prepare yourself to go through the recruiting process. So like that's kind of, you kind of embody what you said, what you take from football. So that's really cool to see and hear that you took that even going through the recruiting process. Because I always try to tell guys when it's talking about the critical points in football business, the first introduction to that is the recruiting process. Like as soon as you step into a school at 13 years old,
That's right.
you are in the business. So you can treat it like it's extracurricular or not, but you're in it. So it's better approach it like that.
It's a true. It's to tie this all up, and I don't want to hold you, but I was when I would on draft day, obviously didn't get drafted. I was frustrated. I thought I tested. Like I hurt my senior year at UMass, so I missed a bunch of games. But I think it was the next day after the draft, Kevin Abrams called me from the Giants, and they say, "Listen, we got a spot here for you. A fullback we brought in isn't going to make it. We want to bring you in tomorrow." Just a story of my life, right? So I'm like, okay, great. So I'm in there. I'm working out a rookie mini camp, and I had a big play during camp, whatever. And then Coach Coughlin in the morning. I was like 5 a.m. I was like the first guy up for breakfast. And I see Coach Coughlin come down, and it's just a funny story because we're talking about it. And he says to me, "Hey, Barthel, where are you from, man? It was a good catch." And I said, "I'm from across the street. I'm from East Rutherford, from Beckton." And he says, "They have football?" I was just like, story of my life, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, I don't know if he was messing with me or what, probably just messing with me, but it was like, I look back at that story. I look at the journey from being a small school kid having to walk on to now, and to me, it was a big moment. It started my professional career to having a guy like Coach Coughlin know me by first name basis. You know what I mean? Like that to me just wrapped it all up. You know what I mean? Like anything is possible. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Amen to that. And so that's like perfect into the transition because just talking about, going through the recruiting process and then having that full circle moment when you're at the Giants. It's like, yeah, I'm from right here. So now let's just talk about kind of, the maturation process to, recruiting and evaluation as a recruiting coordinator, running back coach, and a scout, right? Like your time at Rutgers, your time at Temple, Penn State, the Panthers, and now at UConn. The first thing we talk about the recruiting process is the evaluation aspect of it and just the different things when these guys are going through the recruiting process, understanding what coaches are looking for and what they can do to position themselves to create those opportunities. So I guess my first question now would be, what's the main trait that catches your attention when you're recruiting and evaluating players?
How much time we got?
Oh, we got time, Coach.
I think we work together at Penn State, and I think we've had discussions about this before. I think it's I don't know if it's one thing, but I think it's whatever your school is or whatever your university is, or because every school has different needs, but it's a profile to me. You know what I mean? It's when a guy meets a profile of your standard of what you're looking for. I think it's a bunch of things. You know what I mean? And it comes down to measurables, character, background check, work ethic, academics, and then culture. You know what I mean? And for example, when I was at William & Mary, we had a high academic standard. That was something that I had to deal with when I was at a Temple. We were shoes on the evaluation, right? So there's different cultures, different programs, different needs. So it's your profile, and that's the most important thing. It's the whole profile, and it's establishing that profile as a university and as a program.
That's big that you're saying that, because it's like what you're really saying, for the main trait to be is like kind of understanding where you're most valued. It's kind of what I'm hearing you saying. If I'm like a recruit or a parent listening and I'm listening to a coach, like what you're saying is like, you got to kind of know what place is looking for you, to be honest with you. Like, where do you fit? It's not always just like, I want to go to XZ, that's this school, that school, because we put out a recruiting checklist to help guys kind of make informed decisions while they're going through it. 'Cause, like, understanding to set yourself up for success is kind of falling into that place that you just mentioned, right? Where it's like you fit into the culture, like the coaches coach you the way that can get the best out of you and all these different things, right? There's special players that no matter where you put them, they'll have success. But for the majority of players, 90%, there's like a thing that there's an area or a culture and different points that, lean well to your development and your success at that university. So that's big that even that's what you said is that main trait being the best fit for you,
No
to
doubt.
be honest with you. So to get into the second one, how important are size and speed standards when recruiting?
There's two things that when you say that, there's two things that come to mind that, I think the profession part of it comes into play there, where you have the transfer portal and you have the job security and longevity of the profession, which the demand to win quickly. I know it's collegiate athletics, but there's a high demand on winning right now. That's what everyone. It seems the way the college football and NFL football is going nowadays, where you don't really see a lot of guys having 5+ years at one place. It's very rarely you see that happening nowadays. So to answer your question about the measurables, it's extremely important, because you may not have the time to develop a young man that doesn't have the measurables, or that needs the growth potential. So again, so I think the profession has played a part in this. The measurables, to me, and even when we were at Penn State, were a priority. You know what I mean? It was a priority that we needed to. Obviously, we have the whole profile, but the measurable part of it had to be as close as possible as we can get it. You know what I mean? Because we got to win right now. Not tomorrow. And the guy that leaves for the NFL draft, or nowadays, a guy that goes in the portal, or however the case may be, the next guy in, if he's not ready mentally, he's got to be ready physically, so we can compete.
At the bare minimum, to be able to just compete, and that's what sometimes it's good to hear from coaches. It like hurts feelings sometimes, because some size and speed. I mean, the size you can't really do anything about, right? You're born a certain size, and then you have your purple dots that, what about this guy? He's not this big, but he's performing here. But understanding that when you're performing at a D1 level, size and speed standards matter. And that goes back to what you even said earlier in the interview. It's understanding where you fit. I mean, if you're like a 5'7", or, let's just speed. If you're a 4'8" guy, a skill guy, Power 5 is probably not the place for you. You know what I mean? To be searching out offers and things of that nature. But so understanding where your skill set kind of lends well to, because there's different areas. So that's incredible feedback from Coach there, just understanding that size and speed standards do matter. And especially with the new age of just college football in general, where the transfer portal is a real thing, where guys have options of getting developed football players to fill gaps and things of that nature. And so if you have a younger guy, or you're recruiting, they have to at least fit the size and speed standards for that particular school that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
That goes into kind of the next question, because what combination of pixels or details do you feel comfortable offering a player a scholarship? For example, GPA, speed, background, film.
Well, I think from a measurable standpoint, I think I'll speak on running backs. I think you set a range of A, B, and C. Like here's your grade A, here's your grade B, here's your grade C. I think you have a realm of body types and sizes and speed that you're looking for. And I think you need to start there. And the second thing is the academic piece, right? So they have to have the measurables. Then they have to have the academic piece. And just because they don't have the academic piece, depending on how old they are, doesn't mean it's over for them, right? Once you get the academic piece, and if it's great, that's fantastic. If there's a struggle there, or there's some adversity on the transcript, there's some red flags in the transcript, well then let's dive into it. Let's see where it's at, right? Like you might have a 2.5 GPA. You may have transferred from school somewhere. A couple grade scales are different. Or you may be doing a bunch of extracurricular activities, and your study time at home is you're traveling 45 minutes to school. There's a lot of factors that come into the academic piece. And then there's the person that you get the low GPA and the school absences, and he's not trying hard, and the narrative from the high school coach is he has the potential, but doesn't want to put the work ethic in the study habits, and the teachers mimic that, and teachers repeat that, and then you see where the GPA lies. You see the truth in the story. So I think there's part, it starts with the measurables, it goes to the academics, and then it goes to what we're talking about, the culture, right? Does he fit the culture of this program? Does he fit the narrative? What type of kid is he? What kind of lifestyle is he around? What are his parents like? If he doesn't have parents, then who's the champion in the life? Who's the most important? Who's teaching him? There's things that so that you have to dive into. It's not just one thing. So I think it's measurables, academics, and then it goes into the background. When I say background, I don't mean good or bad kid. I'm saying, who are they as a person? And does that person fit here? Right? That's the key. Does that person fit here? And as a coach, you look at your locker room, you look what your DNA is, you look what your standard is, what your profile is. Do they fit that? Right? Are they going to be able to have success there and be comfortable there so they can grow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's just big when you're dealing with, like you just talk about the different pixels and you're getting the evaluation. Because I'm always trying to preach to guys, they're always like, what do I need to do to get an offer? Like, I did this, I did that. I'm like, well, what about, but you're only this big, or what about your film, or what about this other thing? And so that goes into like kind of the next question, where we just talk about the opportunity to fill in as many pixels for a coach as possible. I always try to say is for them to get to camps, right? Like, so from your perspective, if someone that's evaluating, you pay your salary, you keep your lights on based on how you coach and how you evaluate players. How important is a camp performance to a kid's chances playing at a Power 5 university?
I think it's personally, I think it's from a recruiting standpoint and evaluation standpoint. I think it's fantastic to be able to work with the kid. Not only do you see what he's capable of doing, you have a chance to work with him and coach him, right? And we go back to be where your feet are, and we go back to the process. Yeah, a lot of these kids, there's a lot of topics to cover here. A lot of these kids don't do their part in recruiting the school. So you may, like you said, you may be a 4A kid, and you're a 4A kid, and you don't. And I'm just using whatever school. You go to Notre Dame's camp, and you forgot about all of the Division II camps, and you didn't reach out to any Division II coaches to make sure that they were at camps, and you spend $100-something going to Notre Dame and having your parents get hotels, and you run a 4.8 40-yard dash, and you have these hopes of getting to an elite status or elite place and a scholarship offer when you're not being where your feet are. You know what I mean? You're not maximizing your opportunities of where you should be. I'm not saying 4A kids can't go play Division I football. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying take your options and take your opportunities and really look at the places that you fit. Find the schools. They're going to come find you, but also you do your work and find the schools and find those camp dates, find those unofficial visits. Don't limit yourself to just going to right to the SEC when you just started playing varsity football.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, be where your feet are. You got to grow. You got to dominate with what you're doing and then move forward. You can't skip steps, and that's important.
That kind of brings us to our next question. Now, would you say that aspect of guys not being where their feet are, or having maybe a lack of awareness of where kind of their best position to be, is that one of the most costly mistakes that you see prospects making going through the recruiting process?
Absolutely. I see a lot of guys. I see a lot of guys that either don't go to camps or they are looking for offers. And let's call it what it is. The offer nowadays is different than what it was when we played. I think, to be fair, I think the offer nowadays really is a public notification that you're being recruited. Gotcha. For being 100% honest, that's really what it's come down to. I think it's been set by the bigger schools where they've come in and they've said, "Hey, we're gonna offer you a scholarship, and then if it doesn't work out, we're able to not take you somehow, some way." That affects everyone. Now, you're a kid that's a borderline kid. You may have a huge offer on the table, and you may not go to a smaller school camp because you feel as you've gotten this misconception that you're this type of player because of the way the profession has went. and you've missed out on opportunities to get out in front of a smaller school or staff that would really like to have you, because you didn't get a chance to go to their camp and get a chance to work with them. And so it's because it's a real thing now.
Those are some important pieces where guys kind of miss opportunities, like you're saying, from just having a lack of awareness and kind of missing like where their feet are or where there's best position to have success, like moving forward. So that kind of just going into the next question, where you're just talking about the evaluation process. You spoke on it a little earlier about the family when you're versus the size, speed standards, and what the film looks like, the GPA, and then kind of the upbringing, who's the champion in the home. The next question was, how does the kid's family go into the evaluation process? If you can touch on that a little bit, just on the support system that's kind of around the prospect. How does that go into, the evaluation board for coaches?
Well, the best part about the recruiting process for me is usually the official visit and the home visit, because you get a real chance to see what the household is like and what the kids are like, right? The reality is you're getting kids at 17, 18 years old, and they've been doing something for 17, 18 years. And to think that you as a coach can change that because of you're a guru in something is very strange to me. You know what I mean? I think that knowing who they are as people is a really important thing, good and bad. Right. Can you work with it? Can you fix it? Is it a strength? What's their standard in their household? If their standard in the household doesn't fit your standard as a prospect, well, that's a conversation that needs to be had. And is this something that we can overcome, or is this something that we're going to be concerned with when you get here? Is this something we need to move away from? Right. So I think the whole piece of the picture is really important. Seeing how someone's raised or not raised is really important, because not everyone has different situations and everyone different journeys. Some are strengths, some are weaknesses. It's case by case basis, and you have to affect those prospects that way. As a coaching staff, we can't base one scenario on a whole nother family because it was similar scenario. I mean, each case has to be treated differently, and you have to really take the time and the effort to dissect what's going on in the household, good and bad. Dual parent, single parent, brothers being raised. To me, sometimes just seeing how I am, I look at sometimes being a kid that has lack of resources or a hardship kid as a strength. You know what I mean? I think that I look at kids that were situations myself. This kid has a great GPA. He's doing everything right. There's not a person in the school that says anything bad about him. He comes to camp. He works his tail off. Works in the weight room. Runs well. I mean, and he's doing it all by himself. To me, being a single parent kid is a strength. You know what I mean? That's
big that you say that, because I always have I always feel a way when character is so big on the evaluation totem pole, but not because of character, but like, okay, what's the definition of character from this person, right? Because like sometimes people, like kind of what you're saying, like that hardship aspect of character. Sometimes some people, evaluators, look at character like squeaky clean background, right? Like Tim Tebow, great character, and it's just like, well, that's a range, because they kind of set up people for failure if like they're just not perfect in your eyes.
That's
if
right.
You don't reach this level of character. I'm like, well, character is going through, hardships, going through, obstacles, and staying up on top. And like, somebody coming from this situation with a 2-4, this, that, and the third is a lot different than, that's perfect house. Like, what's the definition of character? So that's big that you talked about that scope and like clarifying, what is the character aspect? Because you can be the best at where you're at. And because I tell families when they're going on visits, be on your best behavior. Like you're representing your family, not you are a part of the process. Like you're having a reflection, on your kid. Because sometimes some parents, some families, you go around and traveling for your kid and going to camps, and you want them to get that opportunity for the scholarship as well. So sometimes there's added pressure, and then next thing you know, you're acting crazy and you're messing up the offer. Like he's a borderline kid, and the coach is like, I'm not dealing with the parents.
I don't want to get into too many people's personal stuff, But this is important because I think that this is a good point. I've been around two people in my career recently that have been two of the most competitive humans I've ever been around. I've got a chance to be assistant running backs at Carolina and coach Christian McCaffery. I got a chance to me and you and Coach Franklin at Penn State and a bunch of other guys on staff got a chance to recruit Micah Parsons at Penn State. Those two guys, to me, were some of the most competitive football players I've ever had a chance to work with, be around, or recruit. And they are from two different backgrounds. You see what I'm saying? Two different backgrounds. And so to our point, what we're saying, the character part of it, it's case by case. You know what I mean? Like
completely.
You know, so
that's great. That's a great insight, man. I think like a lot of people get some value from just that synopsis of, just the character and where people are on that scale. Cause that kind of gets to like the next point where we're talking about when guys receive offers or when you decide to offer a scholarship, right? I think one of the more impressive things that you used to do is being able to evaluate players on a speed at like a very high rate and accurate, right? At an accurate level. So I would just tell a quick story with like EJ would go through a board, like eval the next class of, whether it's freshman or sophomore guys in the country. And he'll just be like, after like a 7-hour day of pounding film and eating seeds and listening to all types of music, he'll have a whole board, on the thing. And then like 6 months later, you'll see like the next top guys. It's like, most of them are up on EJ's board. So when you're talking about that, he's like, offer this guy, a lot of times guys might have two film clips or whatever the case may be. What makes you feel comfortable about go through like the sliding scale of offering like a 9th grader, a 10th grader, 11th grader, and 12th grader? Like, the 9th grader obviously is elite. So what do you need to see to feel comfortable offering young to older prospects?
I was able to, I've always known I wanted to be a football coach, and I have aspirations to be a head football coach one day. And I always thought about looked at my career and how did I get here? So the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to learn like the body, right? So I trained guys in high school, and I wanted to see how the human body works and what is the difference between a guy that has upside and development and a guy that doesn't, right? So I think seeing the different types of body, the different types of positions, the different types of flexibility, ability, and things of that nature as a trainer was an asset, right? And then being a high school football coach and being around development, being around kids and coaching kids, and as they grow and as their mind grows and their maturity grows, that was another asset. And then I got into the evaluation world where I used to work with camp evaluations, and I would travel and go to high school prospects and look at guys like Saquon Barkley and things of that nature in their at a young age, and see like this guy is going to be special because I've worked with this guy before and he does this better than this guy did at 17. You know what I mean? So there's and then you get into the college, and then you have to learn the structure of evaluation. Like the head coach wants something, the coordinators want something, the AD wants something, and how does that all work? Right? So there was a certain path I took to the evaluation. I say that to say this: just like coaching, it takes time to learn how to evaluate. I think a lot of young coaches they think they can just do it, and some can,
right?
Some have the gift, but it's a process. You know what I mean? And you have to really take your time and experience. You're going to have some failure, and you're going to have some success, but you have to really develop your eyes and develop like you said, we built the profile, developing an experience of knowing exactly what you're looking for in specific drills, what you're looking for on tape, what you're looking for out of each position. What's a strength? What's a strength? What's a weakness? What's a strength? What's a weakness? What's a coachable fix? What's not a coachable fix? So if for me as a young coach, I'm still a young coach, I'd say I'm 36, but as a young coach coming in, to think that I have all the answers in evaluation, that's very arrogant. It's a process you have to learn on what you're looking for, how to look for it, what drills you need to see, what are the measurables, what are the position standards. There's a lot of things that go into play.
Absolutely, man. That's we're going to take a quick break because you kind of lead into the next topic, which will be the transition, like your transition out of the game. So we got a quick little read, which will be an LIG read because that's kind of the topics that we touch on. So we'll just take a quick break. LIG Sports Group, we master the business of critical point football, which is a football ops strategy and consulting firm where our mission is to equip our clients with the intel, guidance, and strategy to master the critical points in the business of football. LIG Solutions equip clients with an in-depth understanding of the most critical aspects of the business in football, maximizing opportunities for success, advancement, and longevity. So the main thing with, the blueprint to success and the Blue Chip Academy is just making sure that you're a desirable asset all the way through the ecosystem. So as we go through these interview series, understanding that you're just taking the stories of everybody that's kind of gone through and used this football ecosystem as a catalyst. So as we go into the critical insights and the gap years and transition time for Coach Barthel, just pay attention to the different things that, paid attention to going through that transition. And we're back in. Yeah. I'm back at it. So we're just going to talk about like the transition. It's always like a tough time, man. We're talking about all this good stuff. We're recruiting a lot of valuable gems that you're dropping for upcoming coaches, for players going through the process, for, head coaches all over the place. So how was the transition from the game for you? From when you were leaving the field, not, onto like the training or the coaching, but just when you decided to say, you know what, I'm done playing football. How was that?
It's tough. It was a new world. I had to learn how to adjust in. I just feel like, one of the things that I talk about when I'm recruiting a prospect now is, make sure if football doesn't work out for you, you have a backup plan. Luckily for me, I knew I wanted to coach, so I dove right into coaching. But there was a small time period after I got hurt and my professional career was over, where I didn't really know what was next for me. I didn't spend the time of, like we talked about earlier, being where your feet are. Excuse me. Okay. Being where your feet are. I'm going to edit that one, Coach. Being where your feet are and not being prepared for life when it hits you. You know what I mean? And like I left school early to go train. I had one semester to finish, and I just kept on saying, "Oh, I'll do it next semester. I'll do it next semester." And then the life catches up to you. Next thing you know, it's a huge deal to try to go back to school to finish. You know what I mean? So I think being prepared was the toughest part. I know I wanted to coach, be a coach, didn't know how to get there, had no plan, just kind of got lucky and fortunate by trial and error.
Well, that's a big thing that we talk about here is just having a blue chip blueprint and understanding. Like when we talk about that, it's getting to school, but it's like leaving school, transitioning out of the game into the workforce, into seamless careers that you can work through from football, right? Like there's a lot of things that you picked up going through from your recruiting process, from playing, from coaching, that all lend well to where you're at now. So like even when you talk about, having a backup plan, I like to tell guys you need to have an acceleration plan where it's like you have a plan at the end where it's like everything that you're going through, like you're stepping the gas kind of to incorporate what you were saying, be where your feet are. So like you don't even have to worry about, falling back because like I know I'm pressing the gas and getting all these things that I want to do from being at this school, being in this culture, being in this thing, and understanding that being a desirable asset through each part. So those how-tos and those specific tactical skills to maneuver the ecosystem are a little bit easier than, us kind of figuring our way out. So that's big on that aspect. So you talked about it a little earlier, just training guys, your first transition jobs. Did you get straight into training or was it anything else in between there?
Well, I knew I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to do all that stuff. I didn't know how to get there. So I was still playing pro and I was trying to get back from rehab. I had a hernia issue, groin tear issue, but I would always work out at the field down on Route 17, down at Riggins Field in East Rutherford. And one kid would show up and work out with me, one high school kid, and then 2 high school kids would show up. And then next thing you know, I got 10, 15 kids coming to work out with me because they just wanted to work out with me. And I realized that there's a need for this. You know what I mean? There was a need to go, like what I've been through as a player, to dive in back into the kids and show them, you know, what training is all about and how to train properly. And next thing you know, I'm coaching my own little group of guys. You know what I mean? Like, and it just kind of naturally happened. I had, 15, 25, 30, 40, 50 guys showing up at workouts. And I'm like, man, I got to get like a facility for these cats, man. So that's kind of how it started. I just, it started organically. I found a warehouse and a gym, and I rented out the space and worked with one athlete, guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick. And since he's like, just diving into him, pouring my experience into him, and next kid comes. Then next thing you know, we got, 15, 20 Division I, players, draft picks, and not because of we're special, but those kids all worked.
Right.
They all worked. They all were dedicated. They showed up. So I think the transition part. I'm rambling a little bit, but
no, that's good.
Yeah, I think it was great.
I mean, that's a blessing that you fell into your transition kind of organically came together when you're working out, and it's like guys started coming up to work out and things like that. Because I know for a lot of guys, when they're working out, they're like, the last thing they want to see is a high school kid come around them like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm trying to work out. You know what I mean? Like some guys might reject that. So the fact that you leaned into it and started, training, and then you got into like the entrepreneurial aspect and training guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, you got like guys like, Rashan Gary, and then you're evaluating, you kind of fall into your passion and led your way into, into college sports, which is a cool transition story, because you kind of like, you were going based on what you've been saying is a consistent, is like being where your feet are, right? Like you're working out, these guys come, and now we got a gym. That's a pretty cool transition story. I didn't realize that's how it all started. So as that transition's coming together, and you're like, all right, I think I got something here. I can wrap this up into being a business or something of that nature. What attributes or blue chip traits did you lean on from your playing days to help you like figure that aspect out?
I think the work ethic part, I try to dive into all the kids I worked with. Gotcha. I think for me, I was always a guy that was looking forward and not really just what we keep talking about, the same thing, being where my feet were, and just, it felt like I left school early and transferred because I wasn't getting what I wanted versus waiting my time. And it's always been like, I've always had this, I got to jump forward. And then, and I realized how hard my professional, how the journey was for me. I really wanted to put the emphasis on the kids I worked with and the coach, and we're coaching about just like being great right now, right? Develop, get strong, become explosive, work on your craft. Literally just would have all those kids working, like it's just, those kids had some elite work. You guys like Ahmad Bradshaw and Victor Cruz would walk in the gym, and you got kids like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Rashan Gary and 8th graders. Like, what are these little man? These guys wait to run with me. You know what I mean?
Exposure.
Exactly. It's even just, I was talking to my nephew on Thanksgiving, and he's fortunate to be a part of this whole process since he's a baby. He's playing high school football now. But it was pretty special to watch the growth of all these young men and how they developed and their mindsets, not just the physical attributes, but it's really impressive when like a young kid is working out next to a pro athlete and he sees like what that guy's doing, and you're like, man, I got to do that. Like I got to show up tomorrow and get better because I'm not good enough. You know what I mean?
That's big. And you're like touching on some real key points because everyone doesn't have that exposure, right? When guys come in, it's like this gym here or like this superstar athlete working out. Like these are the drills that you're seeing, and you're naming players. I'm sure you've seen players with talent, but you're naming like Gibirl Peppers or Rashan Gary. You're like, these are first round draft picks. And did you see anything in their mentalities when they were at that first critical point in football that was a little different than other players, like from a trainer standpoint?
The one thing that all those guys that I worked with back in those days had in common. All of them, you know, from even the ones that didn't get drafted first round, the ones that went and played college football, Division I, guys like Stephen Longa, you know, Jarek Martano, a bunch of guys.
Right.
The one thing that they had in common is, and I think the program brought this to them, as they were elite workers. You know what I mean? Like Gibirl Peppers, it was one of the hardest working kids. When he got in the weight room, it was work time. Like that kid knew, you know what I mean? Like
right.
Minkah Fitzpatrick was all business. Like there was no, like, these guys were like at a young age were just driven. You know what I mean? And you know, there's a difference about tweeting about like what you're trying to do or blessed to receive offers and all that nonsense. That's great. That's not nonsense. Great. But to put that work ethic in, you know what I mean? And I remember we had this conversation, me and you, you know, about Micah Parsons when we were recruiting him. I think he was the punter, the kicker.
Kicker.
I mean, they're up by 40 points, and this guy's running out kicking kickoffs. I mean, there's something to be said about that. You know what I mean? There's a work ethic part that these young guys had that is consistent across the board.
I think it's a gift that I smile and cheese when I hear, you know, trainers that get close to players at that age, and you see the mentality of the players at that age, right? You get to see them go through the process and maturate to where they are now. And, you know, I mean, I think about Mike, I think about Pat, I think about, you know, Dafe, and you just, you know, even the guys that are at Penn State now, Brisker's leaving this year, and just seeing like the mentality that stays intact is like, all right, that's the thing. They have all these things, like, let's see if that stays in, and it kicks in, you know, and they use this thing as a catalyst, and they get to that next critical point and, you know, set up their families and all that stuff. It's like, it's pretty wild when you think about it. So I love to hear those stories about guys when they're first getting started into the serious aspect of the football ecosystem. So now we're just going to get to your current aspect as the, you know, running back coach at UCONN. And how you got there. You got there from a different standpoint, right? You came in from an entrepreneurial standpoint of not recruiting, but training guys off the field from a lead standpoint, showing your talent management skills. And then you came into college in an off the field role, recruiting coordinator, doing the personnel thing, going to the NFL and personnel. And then you transition to the on the field role. And everyone that doesn't know, like when you're trying to get into like a coaching role on the field, sometimes, you know, people might use off the field roles to get close and kind of maneuver. As you heard from EJ's story, it was kind of a natural progression the whole way through. As a, you know, the multifaceted, you know, football person, a multifaceted view on the football ecosystem kind of worked, that he can, you know, maneuver those different areas. But we're getting into, you know, just being a coach and transitioning off the field. What's the ideal personality type or player that would lend well to following your post-career path to a position coach that you are now?
I think I'm answering this right. So if I'm not, just cut me off. I think, you know, the one thing I got from Coach Rule, working under Coach Rule, was you have to go out and do it. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, you have to go do it. And you can't be concerned with at what level it is, or what how much money you make, or how big the college is, or if you're a high school player, like what division, what conference are they, like, you got to just go do it. You know what I mean? Like you have to, you know, when we were working together in the personnel at Penn State, and a couple of places have reached out to me, and I was like, man, I can go make some money doing this and go into this, but I wanted to coach. And so, like, dive into coaching. You know what I mean? Like, go attack it. Didn't matter what level I went to. Left Penn State, went to Albany. You know what I mean? I didn't really get concerned about, you know, who or the what, but more so the how. Like, how am I going to get to where I'm going next? And so, if I had advice for young coaches, it would be to go do it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't wait for someone to. And I think you actually, when I talked to you about leaving Penn State, for the next step. You kind of agreed. I remember having that conversation in the hallway with you after I got done talking to Coach Franklin, and you said it's the right move. You know what I mean? Like, you got to go. You know what I mean? Like, go do it, and you can't be afraid of what's gonna what's next. You can't be afraid of what if this happens, or if I go there and this. Like, if you have that mindset, then you're set up for failure. So you got to go do it, and you're going to learn so much by just diving in and getting hands-on and not being concerned about what's next, but the next thing, like just what is coming at me next. That's master that, right? Go be the best running back coach you can be at the next place you can be. Like, and I look at UConn now as kind of built for this role. You know what I mean? Like, built for this role. I've experienced a lot to get here to this point. It was a natural fit for me to get here. The school is very familiar with who I am as a person. The university is a great place for any a student athlete that wants to be part of something special and have a chance to have success with the alumni basis and the academic resources that the school has. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity. But going back to the focus of your question is, go do it. That would be my advice to a young coach. Just, you got to get it. Got to go after it.
So for young coaches, being relentless about their aspirations and making those sacrifices to go, because you have to move, have to do those different type of things. And then just transition a little bit younger. For what about the player? You know, when you were a player, you said you wanted to coach. What's the ideal personality type of a player that wanted to follow your career path? Like, what type of player, what should a player do? Like, that's maybe at UConn, that's like, man, I want to be a coach like, Coach EJ. And I don't know exactly what to do. Like, what can players do that want to coach after ball do right now and be where their feet are?
I think that they have to really decide on what they want to do. They want to be a strength coach. They want to be a offensive coach, a defensive coach, a head coach, a coordinator, a personnel guy. I think they have to really kind of see what they want to do, have a plan. You can't just take job to job and look to jump all over the place. Have a plan, master your craft, right? So, like, if you want to be in player development and you want to get in operational and get a job in operations, that's the lane you got to stay in, and you got to master that lane. Once you master it, then you can move on to the next thing. But I see a lot of young guys, a lot of young players that want to transition. They want to jump to being a Division I football coach, or jump to being an NFL coach, or try to get internships and all that stuff, without like having the bare roots of the foundation of whatever it is they're trying to do. So if you want to go to be a running back coach in college after a player, well, then go coach at high school and learn the run game. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. I see a lot of young guys skipping parts just trying to get a job. Well, if you're just trying to get a job, you're going to have a hard time getting jobs because you're not mastering your craft.
That's so true. That's so true. Mastering your craft keeps you valuable, keeps you as that desirable asset. We talk about at Blue Chip Academy as being that desirable asset at each step, because it changes, right? Like, from bringing value to the football program as a recruiting coordinator is completely different than bringing value as a running back coach. You know what I mean? Like, there's a level of, when you're the recruiting coordinator, you talk about a little bit of things of that, where you can, for someone maybe that's in a recruiting department right now that wants to eventually get on the field, how can they show value to the coaching staff that maybe they're ready for that step?
I think to take the time out on their free time to do football, right? A lot of you guys they think that because they can recruit that they should be a coach, right? So, I've recruited this guy, so now I should be a coach. Even myself at one point, I thought that was it for me. I thought maybe, I recruit all these great players. Now I should be a coach. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of spending the time and effort to, when you on your free time after you've done your job on your own personal time, spending that time with the coaching staff and studying film and studying schemes and understanding technique and understanding. We talked about how to become a good evaluator. It's the same thing on the other side. Like, it starts with it starts with just the basics, mastering the basics. I forgot which NFL coach it was. I think it was Leslie Frazier at the Buffalo Bills. I had a call with him. I met him at the combine, and he said to me, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about your career. And I got a half-hour conversation with him about what to expect my first year going in the NFL. And I was really nervous. And he said to me, you know, some of the best coaches in the world forget about the basics. So you need, as a young coach, master the basics. If you can master the basics, you'll get everything else. Hand placement, aiming points, leverage, tackling, like the basics.
Right,
you know,
right.
Forget about what are we going to see if we got 3 strong? What are we got, like 3x1, 2x2? Forget all that stuff. Like, we have to tackle well. You know what I'm saying? How do you tackle great? You know what I mean? Like, this. What does hand placement mean? You know what I mean? Like, focused on the basics. And so for any guys, young personnel guys that want to get into coaching, or young coaching guys that need to learn how to evaluate, I think you got to spend the time and find the time to learn and grow in those specific areas.
Be where your feet are. Be where your feet is. I don't know if it's proper grammar, whatever the case may be, but like that's on point, man. Like I completely agree. Like, just making sure you take full advantage of where you are in that journey and taking it in and having the faith that you can use those steps and it catapults you and puts, some gas in that engine moving forward. So, man, you've already done so much, in the football ecosystem, and your football journey is dynamic, and you've made some changes, kept leaning in to your passions, which is amazing to hear from college coaches nowadays. What's your career end goal?
I've been fortunate to work with some special players and some special head coaches and assistant coaches in a short career in the last 7 years. Short, depending on who you're talking to. Mike London, Matt Rule, Kyle Flood, James Franklin, Sean Spencer, and now Jim Mora. Your dad, Terry Smith. There's so many great coaches that I got a chance to I got a chance to be around some really great, pick up small pieces from each one of these coaches and create my own belief system, my own structure throughout all these guys. You know what I mean? It's been really, I've been really fortunate to learn from these guys. Ultimately I want to be head football coach, and I have a lot to learn still, but I think that I've been groomed up by some really great people. I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity.
Man, that was great, man. Thanks for that and all the information through your whole football journey, man. Be where your feet are. Right. At the end of the day, make sure that where you're going through, whether you're in the recruiting process, you're a player in college, going to the NFL, looking for that second contract, a coach moving up, a recruiting coordinator, be where your feet are. Make sure that you're taking the critical insights and the tactical knowledge that where you're at and fulfilling the journey that you're going on. So thank you, EJ, for joining us today for the Blueprint to Success interview series. So at the end of the day, subscribe this video as we continue to move forward. You can download the recruiting checklist. I will be in the link below. And thanks again for joining. I'll be your host, Justin King, and this was your episode of Blueprint to Success.
I appreciate you for having me, man. And this is a really special platform. I'm very grateful to be on it, man, and just watching your journey as well, watching you grow from taking different challenges as a high school player, college player, pro player, and businessman, to now personnel, administration, operation. The sky's the limit for you. I think this is a fantastic thing you got going on here. Just happy to be part of it, man.
And thank you, man. Good luck the rest of the whole way through, man. Thank you, and we'll check in.